What if events went differently in The Amazing Spider-Man? What if there was a zombie outbreak that took place in the Amazing Spider-Man universe during the first part of the movie? Welcome back, my fellow watchers of the Multiverse, to another Halloween special episode. And in today's episode, I am going back into the Marvel Zombies realm of stories, and we're going to be putting the zombie apocalypse within the first Amazing Spider-Man 2012 movie. And this is a very interesting what if, because in this reality, instead of giving Dr. Connors the correct cure, he gives him a different cure that turns him into a zombie. Now, things are going to go very interesting in this storyline, and I am very excited to finally dive into this Marvel's What If timeline, because I really do believe that if this would have happened, everything in The Amazing Spider-Man would completely change. It would change right off the bat, especially with Connors getting this different cure that ends up turning him into a zombie. He initially would be the Ground Zero patient, and at this point in time, Peter would still be bitten by the radioactive spider, putting him in a unique position in this universe. But that being said, my fellow watchers of the Multiverse, I do want to say thank you guys so much for all of the latest support. I've been seeing a lot of your requests, and it really just means a lot to me. So that being said, my fellow watchers, let me know what else you would like to see in the comments down below as we continue this massive Halloween marathon all the way through October, and it's going to be very interesting. But that being said, let's dive into the brand new episode. The experiment was supposed to be a breakthrough. Dr. Curt Connors, a brilliant scientist at Oscorp, had spent years researching genetic engineering in hopes of regrowing his missing arm. He believed that by blending human DNA with that of reptiles, who could regenerate lost limbs, he could unlock a secret that would benefit mankind. But something went terribly wrong. The virus wasn't supposed to exist. When Dr. Connors injected himself with the experimental formula, instead of regrowing his arm, it triggered a horrifying mutation in his body. The reptilian DNA caused his cells to decay rather than regenerate, creating a zombie-like transformation. Worse still, the virus became airborne, spreading rapidly across the city through the air, bites, and physical contact. The first victims of the virus turned into zombie-like creatures almost immediately. They weren't slow and mindless. Instead, they were fast, aggressive, and capable of infecting others within moments. The virus worked by attacking the nervous system, breaking down human cells and turning people into decaying yet still living predators. Connor's body, infected by his own virus, continued to evolve. He became the central carrier, controlling the infected and believing that this mutation was the next stage in human evolution. It didn't take long for the virus to spread throughout New York City. Hospitals, homes, and public spaces were quickly overrun. Even the police and military were powerless against the growing horde of infected. With every new victim, the virus became stronger, mutating and making the infected faster and more resilient. The city quickly fell into chaos, with only a few survivors holding out in safe zones that wouldn't last long. Peter Parker, still grieving the death of his Uncle Ben, watched helplessly as the city he swore to protect fell into ruin. Having gained incredible spider-like abilities after being bitten by a genetically altered spider, Peter had taken on the responsibility of being Spider-Man, a hero meant to keep people safe. But this virus was unlike anything he had faced before. The infected were everywhere, attacking anything and anyone that moved. His powers allowed him to move quickly, dodge the attacks, and escape the infected, but he couldn't save everyone. The infection hit close to home when Peter's Aunt May, the woman who raised him, was bitten. Watching her slowly become infected was heartbreaking. She was still herself for now, but the virus was spreading through her body, and Peter knew it was only a matter of time before she fully turned into one of the infected. Desperate to find a cure, Peter reached out to Gwen Stacy and her father, Captain George Stacy, for help. Gwen, a brilliant young scientist, and Captain Stacy, a respected police officer, were among the few survivors left in the city. Together, they set up a makeshift lab in one of Oscorp's abandoned facilities, hoping to use Connor's original research to reverse the effects of the virus. Peter swung between the lab and the city, fighting off waves of zombies and rescuing the few survivors he could find. The infected grew more dangerous by the day, and the stakes were getting higher. The virus wasn't just causing physical decay, it was evolving. Connors, now fully mutated into a terrifying zombie-like creature, had become the leader of the infected. His mind was no longer entirely human, but a twisted version of what he once was. Connors believed that the infection was a gift, a way to push humanity into a new form, free of disease and weakness. He began to gather the infected, organizing them into a horde that moved with terrifying coordination. They targeted survivors, breaking into their shelters and overwhelming them with sheer numbers. The infection wasn't just spreading through bites anymore, it had begun to affect the air. Infected areas became dangerous even to breathe in, and people who inhaled the virus were at risk of transforming within minutes. The clock was ticking for Peter and his team. Aunt May's condition was worsening, and if they didn't find a cure soon, she would be lost forever. Peter, Gwen, and Captain Stacy worked tirelessly to develop a cure. Using samples from the infected, they analyzed the virus's structure. It was unlike anything they had seen before. The virus had merged with the reptilian DNA from Connors' experiment, making it nearly impossible to destroy. Every attempt to create an antidote was met with failure. Meanwhile, the infection continued to evolve, growing more aggressive and spreading to new parts of the city. While Peter was busy fighting off the infected, Captain Stacy kept watch, using his police experience to protect Gwen and the lab. The infected, drawn by the smell of uninfected humans, began to gather near the lab, threatening to overwhelm them at any moment. Peter swung into action, using his agility and strength to hold them back, but they were relentless. The infected were now moving in packs, and their numbers seemed endless. Amid the chaos, Peter couldn't shake the fear of losing Aunt May. He knew that even if they found a cure, it might be too late for her. He had seen the infection take over others too quickly, turning them into mindless predators with no chance of recovery. The thought of losing the last family member he had left was unbearable. But he pushed on, determined to find a way to save her, and the rest of the city. The infection was spreading too fast. Captain Stacy, in a desperate attempt to hold off the incoming infected, was bitten during a fierce battle. The moment Peter saw the bite, he knew what it meant. Captain Stacy, like so many others, was now infected. Gwen rushed to her father's side, but it was already too late. He had mere hours before the virus would take over his body, turning him into one of the creatures they had been fighting. With the lab under siege and Captain Stacy infected, the situation became even more urgent. Gwen and Peter worked harder than ever, combining their scientific knowledge to develop the cure. They discovered that a special protein in Connor's original formula was the key to reversing the infection, but they needed access to the equipment at Oscorp Tower to create enough of the antidote to save the city. Peter and Gwen made a plan to return to Oscorp Tower, the place where it all began. The journey there was perilous. The infected were everywhere, and Oscorp Tower was deep in the heart of the city, surrounded by the zombie horde. With Gwen by his side, Peter swung through the ruins of New York, dodging the infected and navigating through crumbling buildings. The city was unrecognizable, a shadow of its former self. At Oscorp Tower, Peter and Gwen faced their greatest challenge yet. Dr. Connors, now completely transformed into a monstrous zombie leader, had taken control of the tower. His decaying body had grown larger and more grotesque, and he had a horrifying control over the infected. Connors believed that by spreading the virus further, he could turn the entire world into a new species of beings, free from human weakness. Peter and Gwen had to fight their way through hordes of infected to reach the top of the tower, where the equipment to create the cure was located. Peter used every ounce of his strength, speed, and agility to protect Gwen as she worked to get the antidote ready. The final showdown between Spider-Man and Dr. Connors was brutal. Connors, now more powerful than ever, was determined to stop Peter from distributing the cure. Their battle tore through the upper levels of the tower, with Spider-Man narrowly avoiding Connors' deadly attacks. Peter fought with everything he had, using his webs to entangle Connors and keep him at bay. But Connors had become stronger and more vicious than before. The virus had pushed his mutations beyond control, and every strike from the lizard felt like it could be Peter's last. Peter struggled to subdue Connors. The lizard made his way to the central control panel of the device. With a snarl, Connors activated it, intending to release the virus into the atmosphere, where it would spread across the globe in mere hours. Peter, desperate to stop him, lunged forward, but it was too late. The machine roared to life, sending a pulse of energy throughout the tower. Just when all hope seemed lost, Peter noticed something strange, an error in the system. Connor's mutations had caused the device to malfunction. Instead of dispersing the virus into the air, it had triggered something else entirely, a rift in space-time. Peter could only watch as a tear in the fabric of reality began to open before him, the energy of the machine spiraling out of control. Connors, seeing his original plan fail, laughed through his monstrous form. He realized that while the device hadn't spread the virus to this world, it had inadvertently created an opportunity for him to infect countless others. With the rift fully opened, Connors leaped into the swirling portal, disappearing into the unknown before Peter could stop him. However, as the rift tore open, the malfunctioning device also activated its failsafe protocol. It had been designed to release a countermeasure in case of an emergency. The antidote to the virus, which Peter and his allies had been working on, was suddenly dispersed throughout the city. A bright mist erupted from the machine, spreading across New York, neutralizing the infection in the air, and slowly curing those who had already been infected. Peter stood in shock, watching the antidote spread and restore life to those affected by the virus. The city was saved, at least for now. But even as the antidote worked, the rift remained open, crackling with unstable energy. Peter knew that while his world had been protected, Connors was now free to wreak havoc in other universes. Peter rushed back to Aunt May, hoping that the cure had reached her in time. As the antidote spread through the air, he could see the infection in her body starting to reverse. Aunt May was saved. The city had been saved. Peter gazed at the swirling rift, his mind racing with the possibilities. Connors was no longer a threat to just New York or even this universe. He was now a danger to the entire multiverse. Just as Peter contemplated how he might close the rift, a figure stumbled through it. The portal flared with a burst of light, and out of it came a lone figure, exhausted and battle-worn. Peter tensed, preparing for another fight, but as the figure stepped into view, it became clear that this was not another enemy. It was a hero. The figure, a version of Spider-Woman from an alternate universe, collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily. Her suit was torn, and her body was marked with the signs of battle. She had been fighting for her life. Peter rushed to help her, realizing that this could only mean one thing. Connors had already begun infecting other worlds. Spider-Woman looked up at Peter, her eyes wide with fear and urgency. She had come from a universe already ravaged by the zombie infection, and she had barely escaped to warn him. Connors was no longer confined to one reality. He had begun spreading his twisted virus across the multiverse. Peter's heart sank as the weight of the situation hit him. The antidote had saved his world, but it had come too late to stop Connors from reaching other dimensions. Now, the infection was loose in the multiverse, and Peter wasn't sure how long they had before it spread beyond control. Before Spider-Woman could explain more, the rift began to pulse again. The portal had become unstable, threatening to tear wider as the dimensions collided. Peter looked at Spider-Woman, realizing that they would need to act fast to stop the infection from spreading further. But he had no idea how to contain a threat of this magnitude. As the portal crackled with energy, Peter and Spider-Woman stood side by side, both knowing that Connors was out there, infecting other worlds. Their battle had just begun, and the fate of the multiverse hung in the balance. But before they could act, the rift pulsed one last time, and another figure stepped through. A hero from yet another universe, determined to stop Connors at any cost. The battle to save the multiverse was only just beginning. And that is going to be it for What If the Amazing Spider-Man had a zombie outbreak? What do you think would have happened? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's video, and I do want to say, my fellow watchers of the Multiverse, if you guys are new around here and would like to see more videos, I would highly recommend that you guys check out the Patreon as well as the Substack, and even become a part of the YouTube community here. There's a bunch of exclusive videos that we're doing here on the channel, so if that's something that you're interested in looking at, or even just supporting, like, any of the support really just goes a long way. And if you can't do that, then make sure to click that big red button if you guys enjoyed. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning in today's Halloween episode, where we kind of started Halloween episodes off a little bit early in the month, almost, well, a month early, I would say September, but I mean, from here on out, I think it's going to be a very interesting Halloween marathon that we have for you for this year, because I know last year we kind of really didn't do too much, but I'm just very excited. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, and have a wonderful day. Peace out.